All right, we are live and recording. So, in this talk, in this live call, I want to talk about. Yeah, never mind. I was going to grab something to prop my phone up on for the notes that I have taken, but I'm just going to glance down at it as I'm talking. So today is we're going to talk all about how to bounce back after a holiday weekend when you feel like you maybe got a little bit off track. So there are a couple of things to consider with quote unquote bouncing back, right? There's bouncing back practically based on just how your habits are, what your habits are. And then there's bouncing back mentally and getting back in the game if you feel like, oh, I feel like I ruined everything over the weekend from overeating, from having too much alcohol, whatever it may be. And just to be transparent, this past weekend, we went to a cabin and we stayed there with three other couples. They all brought their kids. So we had about how many? We had eight adults, and we had, I believe, eight total kids too inside of this cabin. So full house. It was a lot of fun. But these are people that I don't see very often, friends I don't see very often, and I wanted to enjoy myself. So I just did not log my food at all. I didn't track my food at all. I had some alcohol every day while we were there. Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and had a few drinks each day. And I had really no regard for like how many calories I was eating or drinking. I just like made sure I wasn't uncomfortable. If I was eating something, I wasn't just going to keep binging and eating if I felt, overly full. But I didn't think, oh, like I need to fall within a certain calorie range or else I'm going to gain body fat and this and that. It was very relaxed. And, the thing is like I don't do that often. I only do that for very special occasions. Most of the time I am still logging my food in some capacity and having some kind of gauge of where my calories are. It's really just like bigger holidays where there's something special going on like that, or if we take some kind of vacation or trip. But that's really it. Most of the time I am still like logging my food or, roughly estimating my food intake, at different types of events. Like there have been Memorial Days in the past where I did actually log my food and estimate it, where we were maybe at home. I ate my breakfast and lunch as normal. And then I was just going to maybe like my in-laws house for dinner on Memorial Day. And that meal, I kind of roughly estimated what I was going to eat. And I stayed on track. But this weekend, because it was a little bit more special, we were staying at the cabin with those people away from our home. I didn't want to worry about that. Now, here are the two different things I think we need to tackle when it comes to bouncing back after a weekend like this. Number one is mindset wise, bouncing back. And then number two is practically with our actions bouncing back. And let's start with mindset, because I think mindset is probably the bigger piece of all of this, of bouncing back mentally when you feel like maybe you ruined everything. So there are a few key things that I think about mindset wise. Number one is if you feel like you ruined this whole weekend because you stepped on the scale on Tuesday, after Memorial Day weekend, and the weight in the scale is up 2 to 3 pounds, I want you to lean back on, okay, scale weight is up 2 to 3 pounds. What does the science say as far as how many calories would I have had to have eaten to gain 2 or 3 pounds in just one weekend, right? Like if you stepped on the scale and it's up 2 or 3 pounds and you really want to either like we want to get rid of the aspect of feelings, right? I feel like I gained a lot of body fat. I'm feeling really bloated. I feel like this, feel like that. Instead, we want to have objective numbers to look at of how much body fat could I have really gained, or how much body fat or how much food would I have had to have eaten to gain a certain amount of body fat that I think I gained, right? And I actually stepped on the scale Tuesday after the weekend, and I actually gained 3 pounds. And, right now I'm recording this on Thursday, just a few days later, and it's basically down to where it was before I left. But I even had that scenario. Now, when it comes to the science, 1 pound of body fat equals about 3,500 extra calories above your maintenance calorie level. So if you burn, let's say, an average, easy number, 2,000 calories per day, you would have to eat around 5,500 calories per day at least to gain 1 pound of body fat in one day. Now, it's probably the number actually when you if you were to test this in a lab, the number is actually probably a decent amount higher than this. It's probably closer to 6,000 because as we really overeat calories like that, different mechanisms in the body will speed up our metabolism, thermogenesis, and so on, non-exercise activity, other things. But let's just keep it simple. You would have to eat at least 5,500 calories in one day to gain 1 pound of body fat. Now, if this is a 3-day weekend, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, or let's say Saturday, Sunday, Monday, where you feel like you maybe overate all 3 of those days and you stepped on the scale and you were up 3 pounds. For that all to be body fat, you would have had to have eaten, like I said, 5,500 calories at least for 3 days straight, not even just one day, 3 days straight. And I will tell you, I have a huge appetite. Like, I am the type of person where genetically, I just feel like my appetite is always really high. I could basically just eat myself to continue like gaining weight and gaining weight over time if I didn't track my food in some capacity and wasn't conscious of what I was eating. That's just genetically, I think, how I'm set up. Along with that, I have done intentional bulks back in college where I purposely was trying to gain weight at a faster rate than I probably should have. In hindsight, knowing just gaining muscle takes longer than what I thought it did before. And this was years ago. But there were times in college where I was walking probably like 15,000 steps a day across campus, working out 5 days a week, maybe even 6 days. And I was trying to actively gain weight. And I had to eat over 4,000 calories per day. And even like me purposely, intentionally trying to do that was very difficult every day to eat 4,000 plus calories a day. And there were some times where I was so short on calories at the end of the evening and it was like 7 p.m. that I ordered a large Domino's or large Papa John's pizza and I would eat essentially the whole thing. And that would give me, I think, like 2,500 calories or something, according to their website, extra. And that would help me hit, between 4,000 and 4,400. That was kind of where I was aiming for. And I felt really full, uncomfortable, and it was not easy at all to even do that for one day. So to do 5,500 calories, and that's, 1,000 calories more than probably like the highest I've ever eaten. I think the highest I've ever eaten is maybe 4,500 calories in a day. And that was like really pushing it. And that was like really high calorie dense foods. That was me trying to eat as much as possible. Like to eat 1,000 calories over that for 3 days straight while in this scenario, this person's example, this person maybe burns 2,000 calories a day. So their appetite is probably naturally just lower than mine is, where at that time I was burning probably like 3,500 calories a day, maybe even more. So my appetite was just naturally higher. So with all those things considered, I think it's very unrealistic to think if you stepped on the scale and you were 3 pounds heavier after just one weekend, that you actually gain 3 pounds of pure body fat. Is it impossible? I don't know if I would say it's impossible, but it's very, 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 very unlikely for that to have happened. So that's one thing that really helps with mindset. When you dig into the science and realize, okay, based on how many extra calories I need to eat to gain 1 pound of fat, the thought of me gaining 3 pounds of fat in just 3 days is like essentially impossible scientifically, physiologically. And when you actually crunch the numbers, like if you feel like you overate for 3 days straight, maybe you overate by let's say 1,000 calories per day, and you ate 1,000 calories extra per day, which is probably more reasonable. Like if you're trying to be mindful, but I accidentally have a few extra cookies and this and that. Eating 1,000 calories over your maintenance is a little bit easy when you're eating that kind of food and you maybe kind of slip up a little bit. But let's say you do that for 3 days straight. That's 3,000 extra calories you got within that weekend than what your body actually needed. 3,000 extra calories your body is going to store as body fat, which comes out to a little bit less than 1 full pound of body fat, which, none of you probably want to gain a pound of body fat, but like the difference between thinking you gained a little less than a pound of body fat versus gaining 3 full pounds of body fat is a big difference, right? So keep that in mind. Also, think about mindset wise. Well, I guess this isn't a mindset thought, but it's something that helps your mindset, which is how much is this really going to impact your journey long term? I know, let's say you're in coaching, right? You're in coaching and maybe you signed up for your initial 6-month minimum commitment, right? I know how much of you want to make the most out of, your initial 6-month period, or maybe you signed up for a year or you plan to do this for a year. You want to make the most out of that time, right? I understand that. But at the same time, these habits and the way we think about things, even though there's some kind of like time commitment and constraint that you may have with, coaching, how you signed up, we want to think long term. And even in the worst case scenario, let's say you did gain 3 pounds of body fat, which, like I said, essentially is impossible. But let's say you did. How long is it going to take you to lose those extra 3 pounds of body fat? Now, most of you can probably lose about a pound of body fat per week. Some people, it's a little bit less, depending on your starting point, your stature, age, things like that. But let's just say 1 pound per week on average is kind of a general point for most of you. that at most will take you 3 weeks, if you're really consistent to lose again. Which I know doesn't sound fun to like blow quote unquote 3 weeks of progress in a one weekend. But as long as you don't do it super often, and like I said, most of you at most probably gain 1 pound of body fat over the weekend at most. And most of you is probably even less because you're probably more mindful the other days and not eating 1,000 calories over your maintenance for 3 days straight. But let's even say 1 pound, right? You gain 1 pound of body fat. That's just one week of being on point in a consistent fat loss phase where you probably lose most of that. And what is one week within your long lifetime journey of doing these things? If you plan to like do this for life and you plan to, like be at this health journey, this fitness journey for the rest of your life too. And for me, taking a weekend with my friends like that to just enjoy food, let loose, have an extra drink if I want to, not worry about the calories. For me in that moment, even if I gain 1 pound of body fat over the weekend, that's worth 1 pound of or one week of being in a fat loss phase extra somewhere down the road. Now, if I'm doing that every weekend, then that's not going to be good, right? If every weekend, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, I'm gaining a pound of body fat, like that's going to add up, right? Because if I do that for 52 weeks in a year, then 50, pounds that I'm gaining essentially. But if this is something you do maybe once every, 3 months, and you could go into a fat loss phase for an extra week within that time period and lose it again, I would say in some circumstances that's worth like the trade off. And even then, 1 pound of body fat gained in three days, honestly, is probably on the high end for a lot of you. If you still try to track your food, still try to estimate, still try to be on point, even 2 out of the 3 days over the weekend, right? Maybe it was just Memorial Day where you felt like you overate and that's it. Like even then, like that's even less body fat that you might have potentially gained. Like I think it might be worth it, once every 3 months or once every 4 months or once every 5 months. Like, let's say you have to do an extra fat loss phase. And I know a lot of you like don't want to have to do a fat loss phase ever again in your entire life once you reach your end goal. But I think it's kind of unrealistic to think, okay, like once you reach your end goal, that you literally will never gain body fat ever again. Like there probably will be some times, Christmas, Thanksgiving, where maybe we gain a little bit and we aren't perfect with maintenance, where maybe we need to go into, a short fat loss phase for a month once a year to kind of trim things up a bit, maybe not. But I think like for the purpose of being able to live your life immensely, not just get yourself so hung up on one weekend where you maybe ate a little bit more food, realize like what is 1 pound extra of body fat gained over a weekend in one extra week of a fat loss phase? Like how terrible is that? In the grand scheme of like how you're going to live your life over the next 5 years and the next 10 years. Like when you think more long term and you stop having this scarcity mindset regarding your time and coaching of like, I got to make the most out of every single day and week, you kind of let that off your shoulders a little bit. Hey, it is what it is. I gained a pound of body fat maybe from going over my calories by about 1,000 3 days in a row, which a lot of you, like I said, maybe didn't even do. But if that's the case, like then that's one extra week in a fat loss phase that I have to do down the road. And like, then I'll probably lose it. And, just having that long-term mindset helps out a lot for you to bounce back mentally. And then also, I kind of touched on this a little bit too. The third thing like to think that I think helps with your mindset is like, did you do this intentionally? Like, did you make an intentional decision around overeating and realize, hey, I'm probably going to gain body fat from this? Then if you did, and you knew that you were probably going to gain body fat because hey, I'm probably going over my calories quite a bit because you just have a rough gauge of the calories of certain things, then there's no reason mentally to beat yourself up about it because you made the decision. Like it wasn't a mistake. It was a conscious decision to, hey, I'm going to overeat and stop having regrets around things that you did in the past. And instead just learn from them. If in hindsight, you realize, like, I kind of wish I didn't do that. Don't beat yourself up and do these mental gymnastics of over and over, like, oh, I'm a horrible person, this and that. No, like you just, made a trade-off that you thought was good in the time. And then after the fact, you realize, hey, maybe I shouldn't have made that, trade-off in hindsight. Maybe I should have probably stayed a little bit more on point. I would have, physically felt a little bit better here on this Tuesday after the weekend. And then you learn from it. As long as you change that behavior and action next time, if it's something that you really didn't feel good about this time, then that's good. And so I think mentally, like those things really help me of just realizing I probably didn't gain nearly as much body fat as what the scale says because the scale, those big fluctuations, 90% of them are just due to water weight. Second thing is realizing this makes a small impact, like 1 week and 3 days out of the span of like even a few months doesn't make that much of an impact. And then when you scale that out to the next 6 months, the next year, 3 days is nothing. So realize that. And then also, if you intentionally made the decision to do something, then there's no reason to mentally beat yourself up about it. Like you made the decision, just learn from it and adjust the decision you end up making next time. Now, practically, how do we bounce back? I think a lot of people overthink it and they think there's something special they need to do. Like they need to like double their water intake or they need to like do some kind of cleanse or they need to like do a bunch of cardio to like burn off these extra calories. But no, we don't want to do anything extreme. We don't want to have to overcompensate. We literally just want to get back to our normal routine and avoid the mindset of thinking you have to make up for something. Because that's where you get into the rabbit hole of constantly binging and then restricting, binging and restricting. We don't want that to be a theme, right? Sure, we have fat loss phases and maintenance phases and periods where, maybe we do overeat a little bit, like I did this weekend, but they're not so extreme and they're not so frequent where we're constantly bouncing between, like I said, the extreme restriction and binging. Number two, practically, is, like I said, just get back to your normal routine. Don't overthink it. If you have a workout that's normally planned for Tuesday, on Tuesday. If you have a certain calorie range that is part of your goal, like just start logging your food and hit it on Tuesday. Don't think you need to bring calories down by 500 extra because the previous day you ate a lot. Your body weight is going to like stabilize in the next few days. You just getting back to your normal routine. You don't need to do anything extreme. And then, also too, like other practical things when it comes to just practically getting back to these habits is one, think ahead before the holiday comes and set yourself up for success beforehand. So, like, if you're gonna feel kind of like off, come Tuesday, schedule's a little bit jumbled up, consciously, like, even if it's something you don't typically do, go into your calendar on like Google Calendar or Gmail Calendar or whatever it is, and like schedule out when you plan to work out because you might feel a little bit off your schedule if you didn't get to work out Monday when you normally do. And then Tuesday rolls around, you feel a little bit just like mentally, lost with everything. Schedule that out. So, you get reminded to do it. Schedule it out so it's like a non negotiable to where you're not going to miss out on it. Like it's a doctor's appointment you're making for yourself. And put that on your calendar. That way you see it and you remember it's there and you do it. Other things you can do beforehand is doing some either food prepping or meal prepping. So this could look like, the Friday or Saturday before Memorial Day. You could make some of those bulk recipes that are in the group here and make, 8 servings of a couple of these different recipes. So now Tuesday, once the holiday's over with and you get back to your normal routine, while you might be making up for certain things for work that you missed on Monday or whatever it may be, your breakfasts, your lunches, they're already pre-planned, pre-cooked. You just have to throw them in the microwave and boom, eat them. And then even better, you can, because you made them and you know what you're going to eat, you can pre-log them in your food log too and already plan ahead of time of what Tuesday is going to look like to a T. Like plan your whole day in MyFitnessPal or your food tracking app. Plug in your breakfast, plug in your lunch, plug in your dinner. Make sure those numbers line up to your calorie and protein goal. Already have the day already figured out, when you're going to work out, when you're going to go for a walk, you know exactly what meals and foods you're going to eat on Tuesday. That way Tuesday is a very mindless day coming back from like the quote unquote hangover of the weekend. And like this is, especially pertinent to how my weekend was because when I came back, I felt really hungover, not necessarily from like all the alcohol I had, but just a lack of sleep. Like we went to bed pretty late every single night because we put the kids to bed and then we wanted some adult time afterwards. So we stayed up pretty late and then the kids woke up early, of course, and so was getting like 5 hours of sleep, maybe even less on some of these nights, consistently for a few nights in a row. So like me making sure I knew exactly when I was going to work out, what meals I was going to have on Tuesday really helped me to just quote unquote bounce back to my normal habits because I didn't have to think about it on Tuesday. I just had to do it. Other things you could do if you're not like necessarily prepping full meals like the bulk recipes is just prepping ingredients. So like cooking a bunch of grilled chicken breasts or chicken thighs or 93.7 lean ground beef burgers or lean steak, whatever it may be, whatever like your protein source of choice is, you can bulk prep a bunch of that protein source So like Tuesday, when it comes to roll around, you have easy things to microwave and put random meals together, throw things in a salad, throw things in a whole grain bun, throw things in a wrap, whatever it might be, to just easily slap together, meals that have some kind of lean protein, some kind of fruit or vegetable, and some kind of healthy carbohydrate. But just prepping some food like that goes a long way. And then things to do after the fact, or maybe just some things that you don't typically do that just make the decision to like work out or do this or do that just a little bit easier. So making sure you go to bed as early as you can on Monday so you have plenty of sleep when you wake up Tuesday. Maybe it's putting your gym clothes or your workout clothes, laying them out the night beforehand on Monday. So when you wake up on Tuesday, if you're somebody who works out in the morning, like that's already laid out, ready to go. Or maybe you don't work out in the morning, you work out after work in the afternoon. Lay your gym clothes out Monday night still, or put those gym clothes in your car on Monday night. So they're already in there. So Tuesday, when you wake up, you don't even have to think about it. You go to work and then your gym clothes are already right there. Those little things go a long way. Filling up your water the night before. So that's already ready to go. If there's any kind of food or meal that you can just kind of like put together the night before, on Monday before Tuesday, do that. Or pre-planning, your day in your food tracker ahead of time, which is something I recommend doing anyway. Like I rarely ever wake up on any given day and 2/3 of my day isn't planned. Like usually I have at least 2/3 or 67% of my day planned ahead of time, logging ahead my breakfast, my lunch, and snacks that I plan to have. Dinner is like the one meal I usually leave a little bit open because I usually have the same routine kind of dinners that my wife and I kind of cycle through anyway. But the more you can do those little things to just like prepare and make that next step easier the next morning, maybe it's like deciding on your workout playlist before you wake up or deciding on the podcast you're going to listen to when you go for a walk, when you wake up. Deciding those little things just makes less decisions that you actually have to, deal with during that Tuesday when, like I said, you're feeling that maybe mental or physical hangover from a long weekend or from just being off of your schedule, on Monday. So just realize you don't have to overthink it. Like you don't have to do anything crazy. You just need to get back to your normal routine. And I think the biggest things are mentally, mindset wise, just just not getting in your head and like when you see that weight in the scale spike, realizing you didn't ruin everything and not to let it dictate your actions. Where you get in trouble is when you see a spike in the scale and you're like, oh, I ruined everything. So now I'm just going to have, ice cream, like binge ice cream tonight, and eat my feelings away because I'm feeling anyway. Because now you're letting that spike in the scale, which 90% of it is likely just water retention anyway, you're letting that spike in the scale dictate your actions. And that's what we don't want to do. We don't want that weight in the scale to change the actions that we normally would take. So hopefully this was helpful. Looks like nobody joined live. So let me know in the comments, if there's a better time to do these or if maybe we just need to do them every single week so people kind of get in the habit of, jumping on Thursday. But let me know in the comments, please, if this was helpful. And yeah, I will see you guys in the next one.